The second thing we want to talk about today is how important the French and Indian War is. So this is a huge turning point. This is the catalyst for the creation of the United States of America. So from what you've studied in history, you may have studied this as the 7 Years' War. You may have called this the French and Indian War, but this is really just a war between England and France. But they're fighting this war in all of their colonies around the world. So this is like our first real world war. But there's fighting in Europe, there's fighting in North America, there's fighting in Asia. And really all we care about here is that Britain and its colonies defeated France and its colonies. So here in the United States and in U.S. history class, you probably call this the French and Indian War. That's who the colonists were fighting. They were fighting the French in North America, and they were fighting what they called the Indians, the Native American tribes that were working with the French armies here. And so defeating the French rivals was really important, especially in the northern colonies, because those colonies are right up on the border of Canada, which was controlled by the French, and especially out in what was called the West, which was really like the Appalachian Mountains area and things like that. Not very far west, but just more inland than the East Coast. And so this is important because for England and its colonies, they eliminated the French as a rival on this whole continent. And this also eliminated the French as like a barrier to further expansion. So now, because the British defeated the French in the war, the colonies can expand way more to the west than they had before. And so this is the big impact of the war here. And you can see this on the map, is that once France has to leave and those colonies are given to Britain, then that becomes space for the American colonies to expand. This more than doubles the size of the British colonies in the United States. So now the United States goes all the way from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mississippi River, and that's more than twice as big as it was before. That causes some problems for the British government, because if there's more land, that's also a lot more land to defend. That's a lot more land that you have to keep safe from various Native American tribes, or there's still another rival on the continent in the Spanish. And so this is a huge financial burden on Britain. And this doubling of the size of the colonies, this happens in 1763. This is about 10 years before the colonies declare their independence. Connecting the dots between the end of this war and the Declaration of Independence, the land that was controlled by the British doubled in size, and so did the costs associated with it. The colonies did not automatically start making enough money to offset that tremendous cost. And so the increasing cost of taking care of all that new territory caused the British government to need new funding. And that's where we start in like United States history class. That's where we get into things like the Stamp Act and the Intolerable Acts. That's where the British government starts imposing new taxes on the citizens in the American colonies. And that's what causes the citizens in the American colonies to finally organize and to like work together in resistance and to ultimately declare independence and fight a war to separate from the British colonies. Okay, so with the French and Indian War, it's not important to remember any of the details of the war. All we care about is that the British colonies in America doubled in size, and they had to find a way to pay for that, which leads to the American Revolution. So this is domino number one that causes the American Revolution.